Welcome back to Talk Today. It is 6:26. We'll have the papers in just a moment, but here is what else is coming up on the programme.
Ugly scenes outside Villa Park last night ahead of their Europa Conference match with Legia Warsaw as Polish fans threw flares and clashed with police. We'll have more on that in our sports roundup. That's at 6:45.
The Princess of Wales appeared in public last night for the first time since being named in the Dutch version of Omid Scobie's book. We'll be speaking to a literary translator about just how this could have happened. That is coming up at 7:15.
And Matt Hancock appeared before the COVID inquiry yesterday. We'll be speaking to a care home owner for his reaction to Hancock's comments at 8:10.
Let's take a look at some of this morning's front pages now. The Telegraph reports that the palace will look into legal action over racist royals' claims after a translation error in the Dutch version of Omid Scobie's new book, Endgame.
Confessions that lockdown delay was a fatal mistake in the Times as Hancock takes to the stand at the COVID inquiry.
The Sun pays tribute to the Pogues frontman Shane McGowan, who died at the age of 65 after ongoing health problems.
Well, broadcaster Matthew Stadlin and writer Emma Wolfe are with us for a look through this morning's papers. A very good morning to the two of you.
Hello.
Where shall we start? Shall we start with the Mirror? You've got that, Sarah.
Yes, the Mirror, and this is the naming in a Dutch version of Omid Scobie's book, Endgame, of the two senior royals, which it is claimed their names appeared in letters exchanged between Meghan and the King over concerns raised over Archie's skin tone. And that is, several of the papers have named them this morning following the decision made by Piers Morgan on this station to release the names of the King and Princess of Wales. We've got a bit of a divide across the papers, some naming, some not.
I mean, this is the ongoing kind of Omid Scobie storm since his book came out on Tuesday, Endgame. Let's hope it is the endgame for Scobie. We've had this kind of, royal racist, which is too good a headline for people to pass up. Royal racist. Whether or not the intention, the conversation was actually racist, if it happened. But this is not... I would just like to explain something first. This is not how publishing works. I worked in publishing for 10 years. I've written 10 books. Book names don't just get into manuscripts. It may be that they're trying to claim that there were incorrect versions of manuscripts that were sent to the publisher and that were printed by the Dutch printers. But Scobie is clearly saying he never put those names in. Material doesn't get into a manuscript unless someone has put it
So
there.
I'm really pleased you said that.
Yes.
I also have written books which have been translated into multiple languages.
Yes.
There is no way that anything that you've written would be changed by those translators.
It's not changed.
If it is not there in the first place.
And also, the names have nothing to do with translation. Charles and Kate, or Catherine, would not have been translated.
No. And actually, it's not just names. There's an entire paragraph in the
And they're
Dutch
two
book.
separate.
They're on two separate
In
parts
two
of
separate
the
chapters,
book.
so it must have been a very cunning translating error.
And the Dutch translator has come out, Matthew, hasn't she, and said the names were there. She just translated what she got. So Omid Scobie is saying that he never submitted a book with these names in it. The translator is saying, well, I just translated what I got and the names were there.
I mean, in a sense, that how these names got out there, or how they didn't get out there, this is tittle-tattle, isn't it? The really big story is, what does this mean for the royal family? I mean, it's an extraordinary thing that someone like me here, I'm still not going to actually say the names myself, because I don't think it was right that Piers Morgan did say them. That's his choice. But really, now that the names are out there and that, as you say, some newspapers have actually mentioned them and that everyone watching this show will know the names, the question is this going to be damaging for the royal family or will it blow over?
I mean, you choose not to name them. Isn't Piers right, though? There's such irony in the fact that it was available in another country. So, therefore, we pay for the royal family. This was Piers's response. We pay for the royal family. Shouldn't we have a right to know? Now, I think that's quite...
This isn't new material. This was bubbling around a few months ago.
Oh, well, I disagree on that, though, because Omid Scobie's claim was that we all knew these names were out there. I mean, I've been covering the royals for many, many years, and actually the Princess of Wales's name had not been
Well, I didn't either.
and had not been mentioned. So this book, putting them in, and we don't know the truth of this, do we? There is a real absence of facts around this, apart from the fact that this has appeared in a book in the Netherlands.
Very surprising as well, I think, to many people. I think we should also discuss whether or not there was any intention of racism, because many families and many black families have discussions about a baby's characteristics, but that's probably another topic. But one can imagine that King Charles may have said something a little bit cat-handed or a little bit untactful. But the idea that Catherine, who is probably the most woke member of the royal family, who's probably the most aware, self-aware, aware of mental health, aware of sensitivity and discrimination and all of that, the idea that Catherine would have said this, I think for many will be very surprising.
But also, this is a really difficult position for the royal family.
agree.
Because how
Yes.
do they defend themselves?
Well,
do they come out and say, oh, by the way, we're not racist? I mean, that's
they'll keep
an
their
extraordinary thing.
What about that maxim, never complain, never explain?
Exactly.
Right,
Isn't that the right way to deal with this?
But assuming that they didn't say anything like this is incredibly difficult
There
for
are
those
many
who have been
allegations made
accused.
spare which they haven't responded to. They have maintained a dignified silence since... I mean, there are some of those allegations in Harry's memoir must be bordering on untrue and libelous, and they haven't come out and they have just maintained that dignity.
They did respond, didn't they, after the initial claim was made on the Oprah Winfrey interview, because I think the decision was taken that that claim was so damaging and it had gone worldwide that they had to respond, and we had that very
It was
famous
blown up by Oprah
recollections may vary statement. Since then, as you said, they haven't responded to Netflix, they haven't responded to Spare. Now we've had this book out there. Do they respond? I don't know.
It's such damaging timing, isn't it, though? Because without naming anyone, the King is heavily involved in COP, isn't he?
The opening speech.
I don't think this is damaging.
He is, in a sense, our most valued asset for this country on the international stage. I mean, prime ministers come and go, but he is internationally recognised and respected by so many. So this is a potentially very damaging story. But you don't think that
I
he
don't.
will be...
I think Omid Scobie, I think the Sussexes are so discredited by now. I think the majority of the British public are fed up with them and really do assume that most of what they say is either untrue. The sense I'm getting, and I've talked to lots of different people in lots of different areas, that people are not saying, oh, the King and Catherine are racist.
The mood is very different, I think, to
agree.
2021
I totally
when the
agree
initial
with you, Emma.
allegation was
I
made.
think that the ground has moved and that most people are thinking, I hope this goes away and we can get on with our lives. Should we move, if we can, to The Guardian now? This is the front page. Actually, this story has moved on as well. This headline is Hamas kill 3 at a bus stop in Jerusalem. We've had a 7-day ceasefire, haven't we? We've had the hostages being released, a 3-to-1 deal. As we now know, that ceasefire is now at an end. This morning, this is, if you're just joining us, Netanyahu's office says Hamas did not free more hostages as agreed. They also fired rockets at Israel.
This story in Israel, as well as being horrific, the idea that 3 people were gunned down at a bus stop, including a 24-year-old pregnant woman, it's understood, as well as being just horrendous for the people involved, it also shows what a remarkable state of affairs it is that you have the Israeli state negotiating with a terrorist group who is sort of has hostages, is continuing to kill them and continues to want to kill them, and Israel wants to continue its war against Hamas, and yet they're still somehow able to negotiate the release of hostages. So Israel is negotiating with terrorists who it says, once you've done what we want, which is to return our hostages, we're going to come back and try and kill you again. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, Emma?
It's terribly fragile kind of truth, as it holds. You know, the ceasefire every day seems to be broken. Yesterday it was on, and as you say, 3 people gunned down in Jerusalem at a bus stop. So, I mean, every day, every hour that any kind of truce holds, every hostage that is released has to be celebrated.
But imagine what
it's
it's like. Imagine what it is like
But
for
it's
those
no
male
answer.
hostages who are still being held in captivity. It is believed, if all the hostages were transferred as they were supposed to yesterday, that now all women and children have been handed back over to Israel, apart from that mother and those 2 young children
What
who
about
Hamas
baby
claims
Kafir?
have been killed, and the IDF is trying to establish whether that's correct or not. But all those male hostages who are still in captivity, and their parents love their sons
Of course they
as
do.
much as they love their daughters.
And we believe there are 126 men or thereabouts. Men are seen to be the collateral damage in
I
this.
just want to make an important point. There is a big spread in the papers this morning about the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. And if anyone watching today is in any doubt that Israel is killing too many innocents, and what a phrase that is in itself, just listen to Israel's staunchest ally, which is America. the Secretary of State, their most senior diplomat, Antony Blinken, is saying that Israel needs to do more to protect civilian lives, which suggests, if America is saying it, that they're not doing nearly enough.
Yeah, the tone very much shifted. We were putting that to our last guest, but Benjamin Netanyahu saying that we resume and our intention is the same, to eradicate Hamas. But the situation in the south of Gaza has to be different, doesn't it? Emma, we have this huge, dense population of civilians.
And that's what Hamas have always counted on, is using those civilians as a human shield, embedding themselves firmly in Gaza. And however this plays out, there's no answer to the question, well, what happened? When do you say, oh, Hamas have been eliminated? Because that's not measurable, you know?
It's an ideology. It's an ideology, exactly.
It's an ideology, but also they melt away, they hide in hospitals, they hide, you know, wherever. They go abroad, they come back. When do you say this is over? How does this play out?
What I think we can be clear about, it is not enough, and it has never been enough for Israel simply to say that because Hamas undoubtedly use innocent civilians, and children, no doubt, as human shields, that doesn't and shouldn't give them carte blanche to do what they want in Gaza. And if the figures are to be believed, something like 1.7 million people have been displaced out of 2.3 million. It is almost impossible to get our heads around that. And everyone has been squashed into the south of Gaza, and our understanding Israel is now going to start attacking the south of Gaza. Goodness knows what will happen to those people.
We've barely scratched the surface with the papers, but you are back in the next hour, so we can take another look at some of the stories on the front pages and inside the papers. Emma, Matthew, thank you very much indeed.